Sir, calm down. Kids wander off all the time.
The guard's voice cut through the noise of the mall, impatient and dismissive. We can't just lock the exits because you lost sight of your daughter. His smirk was the kind that assumed authority came with the badge, not competence. The father's hands were trembling, but not from fear. His eyes, steady and calculating, swept the crowded atrium like a man mapping a battlefield. "She didn't wander," he said quietly. "She was taken." The guard laughed. "Yeah? By who? Santa Claus?" What happened next would make every person in that mall remember the janitor they ignored. Because the man they mocked was once the one who trained SWAT teams on how to stop kidnappers like this. By the way, where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments below. This isn't about a missing child. It's about how arrogance blinds people until reality kicks down the door. He stood completely still, his breathing controlled, his uniform streaked with oil from the morning's maintenance rounds. While the guards argued among themselves, he didn't raise his voice or plead for help. He simply studied the exits, his mind moving through procedure after procedure. Entry points, dead zones, timing. He'd lived this chaos before, only then it had been gunfire instead of shoppers. The man's name was Ryan Calder, though the badge on his chest only read Maintenance. Most people saw him pushing a mop, carrying a toolbox, fixing broken fixtures. None of them knew the truth, that before his wife died, he'd commanded a tactical response unit trained for hostage extractions and high-risk rescues. He'd promised his daughter, Emma, that those days were behind him. That promise shattered the moment she disappeared into the crowd. Ryan had taken Emma to the mall that morning as a break from their routine. She loved the carousel, the smell of cinnamon pretzels, the glittering lights strung across the atrium. He'd stood behind her in line, watching her small frame in the reflection of the carousel mirrors, proud and grateful. But when the lights flickered for just a second, power stutter, she was gone. One breath, she was laughing. The next, the world emptied. He scanned every face in the food court, his instincts screaming something wasn't random. It was the way people were moving. Too fast in one direction, too distracted by the chaos of the flickering screens. He caught a glimpse, a man in a gray hoodie, walking briskly toward a side exit with a small hand clasped in his own. Emma's red shoes. He shouted her name, sprinting after them, but the man slipped through the staff corridor before the crowd even realized what was happening. Now he stood in front of the security desk, surrounded by monitors showing everything except what mattered. "We can't make a scene without proof," Sergeant Mallory Trent snapped, arms crossed, her posture rigid with practiced control. "If we trigger lockdown, we'll cause a stampede." Ryan stared at her, the hum of the monitors drowning out everything else. "He's heading for a service exit near the west corridor," he said evenly. "Lock it down." Trent shook her head. "Sir, you're in no position to give orders." He didn't argue. The more she spoke, the clearer it became. Authority here was a costume. Real protection wasn't her job, it was his instinct. He turned away, ignoring the way the guards muttered behind him. He didn't need their permission. Inside, the old part of him, the soldier he'd buried beneath years of quiet work, was stirring. Every muscle remembered what it meant to act under pressure. Every second was a calculation, every sound a clue. He wasn't thinking like a father anymore. He was thinking like the man who used to lead breach operations in foreign cities under fire. He slipped past a maintenance door, scanning the narrow corridors only employees used. The air smelled of metal and coolant, the hum of generators masking his footsteps. Somewhere ahead, his little girl was afraid, and he would find her, with or without backup. The guards might have ignored the kidnapper, but Ryan Calder had spent his life becoming the kind of man who never ignored danger. And as he disappeared into the service tunnels, the mall above carried on, unaware that one of its janitors was about to turn it into a battlefield. The narrow maintenance corridor swallowed him in a wash of dim yellow light. Pipes rattled above, dripping condensation that spattered against the concrete floor. Ryan moved with the practiced silence of a man who'd been trained to navigate tighter, darker spaces under worse circumstances. His pulse stayed steady. Fear wasn't useful right now. Clarity was. He took one breath, slow and measured, and followed the sound of a heavy door clicking shut somewhere ahead. The service tunnels behind Westbrook Mall formed a labyrinth few employees even knew existed. Ryan had helped install their updated fire systems 3 months ago, crawling through every duct and utility shaft. That meant he knew which corridors led to dead ends, which ones connected to the parking lot, and where the cameras didn't reach. The kidnapper couldn't have picked a worse place to run. He crouched by a junction box and flipped open the access panel. Wires, old and new, tangled in organized chaos. He pulled a small multi-tool from his pocket, a holdover from his tactical days he still carried for maintenance work, and tapped 2 wires together, rerouting a security feed to his tablet. Static blinked, then cleared. One by one, grainy images filled the screen. Storage rooms, delivery bays, elevator shafts. Then movement. 2 figures in the lower corridor. Emma's red shoes flashed for an instant before the feed cut out. He felt the burn in his chest, that precise mixture of relief and fury. She was alive, and whoever had her was moving fast. Ryan locked the feed, memorizing the corridor numbers and estimating the kidnapper's path. The west maintenance door led toward the old electronics wing, shut down for renovation, half-lit, and mostly unguarded. Above him, muffled voices crackled through the ceiling vent. Mall security. "We've alerted local police," Trent was saying. Her voice clipped. "They'll be here in 15 minutes. Until then, do not engage. We have no confirmation of abduction." Ryan almost laughed at the absurdity. 15 minutes was a lifetime in an operation like this. He closed the panel and kept moving. As he turned a corner, a janitor's cart sat abandoned beside a vending machine. Emma's small jacket hung from its handle, the pink fabric damp from the condensation dripping off the pipes. He picked it up, running his thumb over the embroidered E. His throat tightened for a moment, then steadied. She'd been here recently, she was close. He slipped the jacket into his belt and pressed on. The deeper corridors grew quieter. The mall's music faded into a dull hum. The only sounds were the echo of his steps and the faint scuff of shoes somewhere ahead. Ryan crouched low, edging past a half-open service door. Through the narrow slit, he saw the man in the gray hoodie dragging Emma by the wrist toward an emergency exit. The kidnapper moved with confidence. He wasn't lost. He knew where he was going. Ryan didn't rush him. He watched, mapping every step, calculating angles and timing. The man reached the door, tried the handle, and cursed under his breath. The magnetic lock engaged. Ryan had rewired it seconds earlier from the control panel, one quiet decision that trapped his enemy without a sound. He stepped out from the shadows. Let her go. The kidnapper froze. His head jerked toward the voice, one hand still on the door. Emma turned at the sound, her eyes wide but dry. She trusted the voice behind her. The man yanked her closer, pressing a hand over her mouth. "Stay back," he barked, his tone desperate, not confident anymore. Ryan raised his hand slightly. "There's nowhere left to run. That lock won't open. Not for you." The man's eyes darted toward the control panel on the wall. "You did this?" Ryan nodded. "Maintenance comes with certain privileges." The kidnapper laughed once, short and brittle. "You think being a janitor makes you a hero?" Ryan's expression didn't change. No, but it'll make you regret underestimating one. For a long second, neither moved. Then the kidnapper shoved Emma to the side and sprinted toward the ventilation shaft at the end of the hall. Ryan grabbed her, pulling her into his chest, shielding her as the man disappeared into the shadows. He didn't chase immediately. He was counting, listening for footsteps, metal clanks, the rhythm of a body moving through ducts. Then he heard it. A vent cover dropping 20 feet ahead. He set Emma gently on her feet. "Hide behind the crates. Stay quiet. Daddy's got this." Her small hands clung to his sleeve before she nodded and obeyed. He waited until she was safe, then drew the flashlight from his belt and moved toward the sound. By the time he reached the vent, the man was gone again. But now Ryan had leverage. The mall's internal sensors tracked airflow patterns through every duct. From the maintenance tablet, he accessed the HVAC diagnostics, watching thermal readings spike on one section of the map. The kidnapper was heading toward the loading dock. Ryan keyed his old radio, still linked to the mall's network. "West Corridor, Sector C, lock all exits." Static crackled, then Trent's incredulous voice. "Who is this? You don't have authorization." "Do it now!" Ryan snapped, sharper than intended. The tone of command in his voice silenced her mid-sentence. He didn't wait for approval. He'd already rerouted the locks himself. For the first time, he heard hesitation in her reply. Who are you?" Ryan's lips tightened. "The man you ignored." He cut the connection and moved, boots pounding down the steel-grated stairs. Somewhere in the maze below, a kidnapper thought he had the upper hand. But he'd never met a man who could turn a shopping mall into a tactical grid in under 5 minutes. Ryan's tablet buzzed, security feed reconnected. The image flickered, the gray hoodie sprinting across the loading dock. Ryan smiled grimly. The exits were sealed, alarms offline, and the guards above were still arguing procedure. Down here, it was just him and the man who made the mistake of taking his daughter. He whispered to himself as he advanced, voice calm, measured. 15 minutes until police arrive. You've got 2. Then he stepped into the open, ready to end it before anyone else even knew a war had started beneath their feet. The loading dock stretched before him like an empty hangar, silent, metallic, smelling of oil and rain seeping through the overhead vents. The fluorescent lights flickered as if even the power hesitated to interfere. Ryan moved with low, deliberate steps, sweeping the corners with his flashlight beam. He had spent years teaching men to clear buildings like this. Now he was doing it alone, in a uniform no one respected, for a mission more personal than any he'd ever led. The gray hooded figure darted behind a forklift near the exit. Ryan tracked the movement but didn't rush. Every instinct told him to control the rhythm, not chase it. The kidnapper was armed with fear. Ryan was armed with experience. He knelt near a stack of crates, glanced at his tablet, and saw the blinking red icons marking sealed doors. No one could enter or leave now. The mall was his grid, and every corridor answered to him. Above, the muffled echo of sirens began to rise, still distant. Police were en route, but far from arrival. He had minutes to neutralize this without risking Emma's safety or alerting the crowd above. The wrong move could turn this into a bloodbath. He took a slow breath, letting calm settle into his muscles. A scraping sound broke the silence. The kidnapper emerged from behind the forklift, gripping a short metal pipe, eyes wild. "You think you can trap me down here?" he shouted. "You think you're some kind of hero?" Ryan didn't flinch. "No," he said softly. "Just a father who knows this building better than you do." The man swung first, the pipe slicing through the air. Ryan sidestepped, the motion smooth, instinctual. The pipe struck a crate, the clang echoing off the walls. Before the attacker could recover, Ryan used the handle of his flashlight to strike his wrist, disarming him. The pipe clattered away. "Where's your partner?" Ryan demanded. "No one moves this clean unless they've studied the floor plans." The man spat blood, grinning through the pain. "Maybe I had help. Maybe one of those guards upstairs likes the money more than the badge." Ryan's stomach tightened. That possibility had crossed his mind, but hearing it confirmed triggered the tactical part of him he'd tried to bury. It meant this wasn't random. Someone had fed this man information. Someone in uniform had looked the other way. The kidnapper lunged again, trying to grab for the flashlight. Ryan pivoted, redirecting his weight, using the man's momentum against him. In 2 seconds, the attacker was face down on the floor, arm twisted behind his back. "You're going to tell me who," Ryan said, pressing the man's wrist until he groaned. "Check the staff entrance," the man hissed. "Delivery code 4739. You'll find her there." Her. The pronoun hit like a jolt. Ryan didn't know who she was yet, but it didn't matter. Whoever coordinated this had used the mall's inner systems, something only security access allowed. He zip-tied the man's wrists with a maintenance strap and secured him against a railing. "Police will pick you up," Ryan said, though he doubted the man would still be there when they finally arrived. He turned to his tablet again. A map of the mall filled the screen, sector by sector blinking. He entered the code. One section lit up, a storage hall adjacent to the staff lounge, sealed from public view. That was where Emma had almost been taken. That was where his enemy waited. He switched frequencies on the radio. "Sergeant Trent, this is maintenance. You've got a problem in your own department." Static. Then her voice, sharp and defensive. "Who authorized you to use this channel?" "Not the time," Ryan said. "You've got internal sabotage. One of your staff gave a kidnapper your access codes." Silence. Then brittle skepticism. "That's impossible. My team is—" He cut her off. "One of your guards is watching the south corridor. You're missing another from the north checkpoint. Check your rosters." A long pause, then the sound of her breath catching. "Mendez," she whispered. "He didn't respond to call-ins." Ryan's tone hardened. "Then you'd better start believing me." For a moment, there was no reply, only the faint hum of distant ventilation. Then her voice came back, quieter. "What do you need me to do?" The shift in tone told him everything. She'd stopped seeing a janitor and started listening to a commander. "Seal all public exits," he ordered. "Reroute the police to the north delivery entrance, and stay out of the basement. This part's mine." He ended transmission before she could protest. Ryan checked the bound man one last time. "You made a mistake picking this place," he said evenly. "You thought I'd be like them, waiting for permission." The man smirked weakly. "You're still just a janitor." Ryan crouched low, meeting his gaze. "Then consider this a cleanup." He turned, heading for the elevator shaft leading to the staff lounge level. Every movement was mechanical now, his focus absolute. As the lift hummed upward, he replayed the conversation in his mind. Internal collusion changed everything. It meant this operation had deeper layers, and Emma's abduction might have been a cover for something bigger. The doors slid open into a hallway washed in sterile white light. Security posters lined the walls, ironically titled, "Safety is everyone's responsibility." He moved past them without slowing. Ahead, faint voices echoed through the intercom vents. He caught fragments. Trent, barking orders, guards scrambling, a confused mixture of guilt and disbelief. The system he'd trusted to protect civilians was cracking under its own arrogance. Ryan stopped at a junction and peered through the small glass pane of the staff lounge door. 2 guards stood arguing inside, one holding a phone, the other pacing nervously. Their uniforms were the same, but their eyes told different stories. One uncertain, the other cold and resolved. He adjusted the wrench at his belt, ready for whatever came next. The victory strategy was already in motion. Expose their failure in public view, turn their pride into the stage of their downfall. He didn't need revenge, he needed proof. Proof that would force the world to see the difference between authority and competence. He took another breath and stepped inside. Every head turned as the maintenance guy crossed the threshold. And for the first time, none of them laughed. For a moment, no one moved. The hum of the vending machine filled the staff lounge, sharp and rhythmic like a clock counting down. Ryan stood just inside the door, still wearing his stained uniform and tool belt, his posture calm but commanding. 2 guards faced him, one nervous, shifting on his feet, the other too still, too watchful. He could see guilt in one pair of eyes and calculation in the other. "Maintenance areas restricted," the colder one said, his voice flat. His name tag read Mendez. "You lost, buddy?" Ryan didn't answer right away. He scanned the room instead. The half-eaten sandwiches on the table, the flickering security feed on the small TV, and a duffel bag resting near the lockers. The zipper was half open, revealing a glimpse of stacked cash bands and a small black radio transmitter. His jaw tightened. It was confirmation. Mendez wasn't just negligent, he was complicit. "I'm exactly where I need to be," Ryan said quietly. He took one step forward, eyes never leaving the duffel bag. "You've been selling access codes, that's how he got her out of the food court." The nervous guard's voice cracked. "What? No, Mendez, what's he talking about?" Mendez sneered, resting a hand on the pistol holstered beneath his jacket. "You got proof of that, janitor?" Ryan's hands stayed at his sides. "You'll find it on your radio frequencies and in that bag." The tension snapped like glass. Mendez drew the weapon, aiming straight for Ryan's chest. "You should have stayed in your lane," he hissed. Ryan didn't flinch. The flash of the muzzle came first. A dry click, not a shot. The gun jammed. He'd noticed earlier, oil stains along the trigger guard, careless maintenance, overuse. Mendez cursed and tried again, but Ryan was already in motion. He closed the distance in 3 strides, slamming his shoulder into the man's torso, sending the gun skittering across the floor. The other guard jumped back, terrified. They hit the lockers with a metallic crash. Mendez swung wildly, but Ryan caught his wrist mid-strike, twisting until he heard a pop. The gunman howled, collapsing to one knee. Ryan pinned him against the metal door and leaned close enough that their breath mingled. "You sold security access in a building full of families," he said. "Tell me who else is involved." Mendez spat at the floor. "You think you're a hero? You're just a washed-up cop." Ryan's voice stayed even. "No, just a father cleaning up your mess." He tightened his grip until Mendez dropped a small USB drive from his pocket. It hit the tile with a soft ping. The nervous guard picked it up hesitantly, his hands shaking. I didn't know," he whispered. "He said it was a side job. I thought it was data backups for management." Ryan took the drive, slipping it into his own pocket. "Get out," he said to the younger guard. "Go to the control room, tell Sergeant Trent she's been compromised, and tell her the evidence is coming with me." The guard hesitated only a second before bolting out the door. Ryan turned back to Mendez, who was slumped against the lockers, breathing hard. "You're going to sit right here until the police arrive," Ryan said, stepping away. "And if you move—" Mendez laughed weakly. They won't believe you. You're nothing here. Ryan looked back at him, a faint, knowing smile forming. That's what makes it work. He left the man there, grabbing the duffel bag on his way out. Inside the bag, beneath the cash, were laminated ID badges and a small hand-drawn map of the mall's emergency routes only a senior security officer would have. Whoever bought this information hadn't just wanted Emma, they wanted access to something bigger. The mall's financial core, its data servers, maybe even the weekend cash vaults from the central atrium stores. The kidnapping had been a distraction, a way to clear the area of witnesses. As he moved back into the service corridor, the weight of the bag and the evidence pressed against his shoulder. Every step echoed with purpose. The victory strategy was taking shape. Expose them publicly. Strip away their facade of control. Make the world see who the real professionals were. He radioed Trent again. "Sergeant, your man Mendez is dirty. I've got his payout and the transmitter. You've got about 5 minutes before the rest of this hits the mall's public feed." Her voice came back tense. "Where's my officer?" "Alive," Ryan replied. "For now." "You can't just—" He interrupted. "Listen carefully. You've got a kidnapper in custody and a traitor in your ranks. Which headline do you want the media to read?" There was a pause, then the faint sound of her swallowing hard. "Do what you have to do." That was all he needed. Ryan reached a junction near the freight elevator and keyed in the override he'd memorized months ago. The lights in the maintenance tunnels flickered, then came alive with a low hum. The mall's CCTV feed would start syncing in 60 seconds. The moment that happened, every store monitor and public display would project whatever came through his tablet. He crouched, plugged the USB drive into the device, and began copying files. Names, timestamps, transaction logs, all proof of the security breach. Once the upload hit the surface level, every witness would see that the guards who mocked him had caused the chaos they couldn't contain. As the file bar filled, Ryan looked up, eyes narrowing. Footsteps echoed behind him, too heavy for Emma, too steady for panic. He turned, flashlight beam slicing through the dark, landing on Sergeant Trent herself. Her expression was unreadable. "You were right," she said quietly. "Mendez is in custody." Ryan straightened. "You're late." She nodded once. "Maybe, but I'm here now. What's the plan?" He handed her the duffel bag, eyes locked on hers. "We're going to show them everything." For the first time since it began, she didn't argue. Outside, the sirens grew louder, and above them, the hum of screens powering up signaled the start of something bigger than a rescue. It was justice coming to life in real time. The glow of screens flickered across the darkened hallways as the CCTV systems rebooted one by one. On every floor, televisions that normally played advertisements for perfume and jewelry now blinked to life with a grainy image of the mall's security room. Feed. The upload had begun, exactly as Ryan planned. From here on, every shopper, guard, and vendor would see what he saw. The truth was no longer a secret. Trent stood beside him near the freight elevator, clutching the duffel bag of evidence. Her voice trembled as she asked, "Are you sure this will work?" Ryan adjusted the controls on his tablet, his focus razor sharp. "It already is. The footage, the files, the money. It's all being mirrored across every screen in the building. By the time the police walk in, they'll see everything. Who sold access, who ignored protocol, who let a child get taken." She exhaled slowly, tension giving way to realization. "You're not just saving your daughter. You're dismantling the entire system that failed her." He didn't look up. "I don't dismantle systems, I clean them." On the central monitor, one feed displayed Emma, safe and huddled behind a barricade near the maintenance wing, guarded now by a responding patrol officer who had finally reached her. Another feed showed Mendez, handcuffed, surrounded by law enforcement. The visual proof of betrayal was spreading through the building like wildfire. Overhead, shoppers had stopped mid-step. Parents, clerks, and security guards stared up at the displays as footage rolled. Ryan's perspective from his tablet showing his chase through the tunnels, the confrontation with Mendez, and the files being opened line by line. Mallory Trent's own voice echoed over the intercom. All units stand down. Public feed is active. All officers report to command center immediately. Her tone was no longer defensive. It was that of a commander who'd learned humility. Ryan didn't pause to savor it. The kidnapper's accomplices might still be inside. "There's a reason this was planned for today," he said. "Weekend traffic, cash-heavy businesses. The abduction was bait, a distraction while someone breached the financial servers. Where's your IT hub?" Trent hesitated, then pointed toward the eastern mezzanine. 2 levels up, behind the admin offices. It's isolated, secured by internal passcodes. "Not anymore," Ryan muttered, scanning through his blueprints. "That's where I'm going." "I'll go with you." He gave her a hard look. "You sure about that?" Trent's shoulders straightened. "I owe you more than words." They moved together through the maintenance lift, ascending into the administrative wing. Alarms wailed intermittently above, the mall's automatic systems confused by overlapping commands. As they stepped out, the hallway lights flickered again. Emergency power only. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, the faint rhythm of typing echoed, rapid, mechanical. Ryan signaled for silence. He motioned toward a corner where a glass-walled office overlooked the atrium. Inside, a figure hunched over a laptop, surrounded by open wiring panels. It wasn't a guard. It was a civilian contractor. Technician from the third-party maintenance crew, badge clipped sideways, hands moving fast over a portable drive docked into the mall's central server. Trent whispered, "That's our systems engineer, Kaler. He's been here for weeks upgrading security firewalls." Ryan's jaw set. "No, he's been weakening them." He stepped forward, boots silent against the floor. When Keller finally looked up, his expression froze. "You're not supposed to be here," he said quickly. "Security's handling it." Ryan's voice cut through like steel. They were, until they started selling their access. Keller's hand drifted toward a small pistol lying beside the keyboard. Ryan noticed the motion before he even finished blinking. His left hand lashed out, flipping the laptop lid down and slamming it into Keller's wrist. The weapon skittered away. Trent rushed forward, cuffing Keller with a smooth, practiced motion. "You're done," she hissed. "The whole mall's watching you right now." The man's face drained of color. On every TV screen in the complex, his live feed replaced the earlier recordings. Dozens of shoppers gasped. Some pulled out their phones. The broadcast had become undeniable. Real-time exposure, no edits, no filters. Ryan turned the camera toward the central terminal. "This is where the breach ends," he said quietly, his voice carrying across the intercom. "And this is where responsibility begins." Trent stared at him, something like respect glinting behind her fatigue. "You could have walked away. No one would have blamed you. I couldn't teach my daughter to trust the world if I didn't fight to fix it." He disconnected the external drives, yanking cables free until sparks flickered and the screens above the atrium glowed white. For a split second, the entire mall fell silent. Then applause erupted. From balconies, food courts, stairwells, everywhere the footage had played. The same guards who doubted him now watched in stunned recognition as he stood beside their disgraced superior, proof of what real duty looked like. But Ryan wasn't finished. He leaned toward Trent. "Get your people ready. We've exposed them, but one more link remains. The data trails don't stop here. They end at someone who ordered this." Her brow furrowed. "You think it goes higher?" "I know it." He pointed to the final folder on the recovered laptop, marked Internal Transfers. "This isn't about ransom. It's about laundering money through mall accounts. Whoever initiated this wanted chaos to mask a withdrawal." He pocketed the flash drive, eyes narrowing. "And I'm going to make sure the world sees their face next." As they walked toward the stairwell, Trent's radio came alive again. "Sergeant, command post secure. All exits contained. The press is here. They're asking for statements." Trent looked at him, waiting. Ryan shook his head. "No cameras yet. Let the evidence speak first." She nodded slowly, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "You really were one of them, weren't you?" He met her eyes, calm and steady. "Not anymore. I'm just a man who learned that sometimes cleaning floors teaches you more about leadership than any badge." For the first time all day, he let himself breathe. The battle wasn't over, but the momentum had shifted. The truth was loose in the world, irreversible and undeniable. The janitor they dismissed was now the man holding the entire mall together. And somewhere, deep in the crowd below, his daughter was safe because he refused to wait for permission. Subscribe with the bell on, because next, you'll see what happens when corruption faces the one man who knows every corridor, every exit, and every blind spot they thought they controlled. The stairwell vibrated faintly with the roar of applause from below. Ryan paused halfway down, his hand on the cold rail, listening to the strange rhythm of it. Chaos turned into order. People were finally seeing what he'd been trying to tell them since the first minute. The truth had gone public. But exposure alone wasn't victory. Not yet. Trent followed close behind, radio pressed to her shoulder. "Command confirms full lockdown. Police have taken custody of Mendez and the technician. They're calling it an internal corruption case." Ryan kept moving, boots hitting each step with measured precision. "It's not over. Whoever paid them is still out there, and they'll try to cover their tracks before we reach the main control hub." She frowned. "That hub's restricted. Even I need clearance from upper management to access it. Then we'll skip the paperwork." They emerged onto the mezzanine overlooking the atrium. Every digital screen still flickered with the last freeze frame of Keller's arrest. News crews had gathered near the main doors, filming through glass. Officers had begun ushering civilians out, but many refused to leave, too riveted by the live feed of a janitor leading a security operation. Trent's voice softened. "You know, in 20 years of service, I've never seen someone flip the chain of command like that." Ryan gave her a faint smile. "I didn't flip it. I just reminded it who it's supposed to protect." He crossed the mezzanine toward a hallway marked Authorized Personnel Only. Beyond it lay the Administrative Control Center, the digital heart of Westbrook Mall. He swiped a generic maintenance card against the reader. A red light blinked. Access denied. Trent stepped forward, hesitating before pressing her own badge. Green light. The door slid open. Inside, the control center hummed with rows of humming servers and blinking consoles. Screens lined the walls, showing network diagnostics and transaction logs. In the center stood a terminal connected directly to mall management's financial systems. It was here, Ryan knew, that the final layer of deceit hid. He approached the console and inserted the flash drive they'd recovered. Data began scrolling. A flood of encrypted transfers routed through the shell accounts. As he decrypted the first chain, Trent leaned in, eyes narrowing. These aren't just internal payments. They're withdrawals from disaster funds. Millions transferred to private accounts. Someone used the kidnapping to trigger emergency authorizations. Ryan's jaw tightened. Whoever they are, they didn't just sell access. They exploited a crisis protocol. Trent clicked open the metadata. A familiar name flashed at the top of the authorization list, Mallory Trent. Her breath caught. That's impossible. Ryan studied her face. You didn't sign this? No, that's not my login. He believed her. The pattern was too clean, the timing too convenient. Her credentials had been used minutes before the power flicker that started everything. Whoever was behind this had planned to frame her, keep her distracted while the money vanished. She staggered back, pale. They'll think I did this. Ryan turned toward the surveillance feeds. Then we'll show them who really did. He opened the recorded archives from earlier that morning. The footage rewound until it showed a man in a tailored suit entering the security wing, someone neither of them had seen before. He walked confidently, swiped an admin card, and disappeared into the very room where they now stood. Ryan froze the frame and zoomed in on the ID badge. Trent whispered, "That's Director Lowell. Regional Operations." Ryan felt the full weight of understanding settle in. He used your credentials, planted Keller and Mendez, and built this entire operation to collapse under your name. You weren't supposed to survive this. Trent's expression hardened. Then let's make sure he doesn't either. Ryan nodded once. He's still here. You don't leave a live feed running on site if you've already escaped. He's waiting for the transfer confirmation. They moved back toward the service elevators. Each step echoed with purpose. Down below, police were consolidating control of the lower floors. Above, the executive offices remained dark and silent. The elevator's digital panel showed only one active signal. Top floor, private access. Ryan hit the button. The lift began its slow mechanical rise. The hum of gears and cables filled the silence. Trent exhaled. You're going after him alone, aren't you? He shook his head. No, you're coming with me. You need to be the one who brings him down, publicly. She gave a short, disbelieving laugh. You're turning my downfall into my redemption arc. Poetic justice, he said simply. When the elevator doors slid open, they stepped into the executive corridor, carpeted, silent, smelling faintly of expensive coffee and ozone from overworked air filters. At the far end, a glass-walled office glowed. Director Lowell sat behind a desk, watching the same security feeds that displayed Ryan and Trent's every move. He rose slowly, adjusting his cufflinks. Well, he said, his tone amused. The janitor and the sergeant. What a team. Trent stepped forward, voice steady. You set me up. You used my ID to authorize the breach. Lowell smiled thinly. Perception is everything, Sergeant. You needed to take the fall. I simply accelerated the process. Ryan's eyes never left him. You hired men to abduct a child. Collateral distraction, Lowell replied. I assumed she'd be found unharmed. My mistake was underestimating you. Ryan's voice dropped an octave. A lot of people make that mistake. He lifted his tablet, flicking on a live transmission feed. Every screen in the mall's atrium illuminated with the image of Lowell's office. His words, his face, his confession captured in real time. The man stiffened. You're broadcasting this? Ryan's gaze was cold. Public exposure, my favorite kind of justice. Lowell lunged toward his keyboard, but Trent was faster. She drew her sidearm and aimed. Hands where I can see them. Outside the glass walls, lights flashed as officers converged. Lowell froze, the realization dawning too late. The crowd below erupted as his confession blared through the intercom, echoing across every floor. Ryan lowered his tablet slowly, the calm returning to his voice. "You're finished." He turned to Trent, giving her a small nod. Now the world knows who the real heroes are, and who the cowards were. For the first time, she smiled without bitterness. "Guess you really did clean house." As police entered, cuffing Lowell and escorting him past the glass, Ryan looked down through the window to the atrium far below. Emma was safe, waving up at him from the arms of a rescue officer. For a fleeting second, the noise, the chaos, the lights, all faded. Only his daughter's small smile remained. He raised a hand in silent acknowledgement, a promise kept. Justice had been served, but for Ryan Calder, the mission wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration, showing the world that integrity doesn't wear a uniform, and sometimes the quietest man in the room is the one who saves it. For the first time that day, Ryan let his shoulders relax. Through the glass wall, the world outside his control room looked like a living mosaic. Officers, civilians, and flashing lights blending into one restless scene. But inside, there was silence. Director Lowell sat cuffed between two officers, his immaculate suit now wrinkled, his face pale beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. Sergeant Mallory Trent stood nearby, watching in disbelief as the man who had nearly destroyed her career was led away. Ryan stayed by the console, gaze fixed on the monitor displaying Emma's location. She was in the atrium now, wrapped in a silver rescue blanket, sipping water from a paper cup. Every few seconds she looked around, searching for him. He could go to her right now, he could end it. But there was one more thing left to do. The exposure was only half the battle. The evidence had to stick. Trent turned toward him, voice low. "It's over, Calder. You did it." He shook his head. "Not yet. Lowell's been laundering funds through this building for months. There'll be off-site backups, ghost accounts. He planned for this to survive his arrest." She rubbed her temples, exhausted. "You can't handle all that alone." Ryan gave a small, tired smile. "I'm not alone anymore. You've got your team and the public. Everyone watching now is part of this cleanup." He turned back to the terminal, typing commands into the system. "The data logs we pulled, they're still being stored on a mirrored drive in the west server bay. We trace that, and we nail every name connected to this." Trent frowned. "That wing's unstable. Power's still fluctuating from when the fire alarms went off. Then I'd better move before it collapses." "Ryan," she started, but he was already gone. The service elevator rattled as it descended. The noise of the crowd faded the deeper he went. Down here, in the mechanical veins of the building, it was all hum and vibration. His flashlight beam danced across concrete walls marked with decades of stains and forgotten repairs. The air smelled of ozone and metal dust. He passed the room where he'd first confronted Mendez. It was empty now. Only the echoes of that fight remained, the dented locker door swinging slightly in the draft. He kept moving, deeper, toward the west bay. When he reached it, the sound hit him first. A low crackle, electrical, like rain on a tin roof. The fire suppression sprinklers had kicked on, drenching the entire chamber. Wires sparked along the floor, the smell of burning insulation thick in the air. At the far end, the server array still pulsed faintly, a heartbeat of light in the chaos. Ryan exhaled and waded through the ankle-deep water. Every second mattered. He pulled a protective sleeve from his belt and slipped it over the flash drive, plugging it into the main console. Lines of code flashed across the screen as he copied the hidden backup logs. There were dozens, each one linking Lowell's transactions to shell corporations under false names. Enough to bury him for life. But something else appeared near the end of the directory, a file labeled Project Albatross. It wasn't part of the laundering trail. It was something different, something encrypted separately with high-level clearance. Ryan frowned. He'd never heard of it before. He tapped a few keys, initiating a decode process. The progress bar began to crawl forward. Behind him, a faint sound echoed through the tunnel. Footsteps. He froze. Then came a voice he recognized instantly. Sharp, anxious, female. "Calder, it's me." He turned, lowering the flashlight slightly. Trent appeared through the haze, soaked to the bone, her uniform smeared with ash. "You shouldn't be down here," he said. She shook her head, panting. "Neither should you. The structural supports in this wing are compromised. If you stay—" The console beeped. Decryption complete. Ryan glanced at the screen, then back at her. "I think we just found why Lowell risked everything." Trent stepped closer, reading over his shoulder. The decoded file displayed rows of financial authorizations tied to multiple city contracts, police, infrastructure, even emergency response budgets. The mall wasn't just a laundering front, it was a hub for manipulating government funds. Her eyes widened. "This goes way beyond us." Ryan nodded grimly. "Exactly. Which means whoever's behind this won't stop at Lowell. He's a pawn." As if on cue, his radio crackled. A distorted male voice came through, calm, composed, and unmistakably confident. "Mr. Calder, I suggest you stop what you're doing." Ryan froze. The line wasn't coming from Trent's network. It was direct. The voice continued. "You've made your point. The crowd adores you. But walk away now, and you can still keep your life intact." Trent's hand went to her earpiece. "Who is this?" The voice chuckled. "Someone who's been watching this mall long before your janitor decided to play hero." Ryan disconnected the feed without responding. His pulse stayed even. "They're monitoring the servers remotely. That means this data's still transmitting." "Can you cut it?" Trent asked. He shook his head. "Not from here. I have to isolate the relay physically, under the server floor." He knelt, pried open a panel, and began rerouting the cables manually. Sparks leapt as he disconnected the final conduit. The noise on the radio died instantly. He stood, wiping water from his face. There, transmission cut. But above them, a new alarm began to sound, a deep, echoing tone that vibrated the walls. Trent's radio came alive with panic. "This is command. Backup power is surging. Someone's overriding the system." Ryan's eyes darted to the console. The words "Remote Reboot Initiated" flashed across the monitor. The servers began powering back up. Whoever was behind this wasn't just watching, they were fighting back. He ripped the flash drive free and pocketed it. "We're done here. Get to the elevator." As they sprinted down the flooded corridor, the lights above flickered violently. The roar of mechanical fans filled the air, louder and louder, until a blast of white sparks rained down from the ceiling. Trent stumbled, nearly falling, but Ryan caught her arm and pulled her forward. They burst through the elevator doors just as a wave of smoke billowed out of the server bay. The last thing Ryan saw before the doors closed was the system console sparking out completely. The word "Purge Sequence" engaged, burning red across the dying screen. Inside, the lift, Trent's breath came in ragged gasps. "He's wiping everything." Ryan looked straight ahead, face set like stone. "Then we just became the only backup left." Neither spoke again as the elevator rose, carrying them back toward the bright noise of the atrium. Outside those doors, the world believed the crisis was over, but inside, Ryan knew it had only changed shape. The janitor had beaten the kidnappers and the corrupt director. Now he was staring at something bigger, something hidden beneath the surface of every system he thought he understood. When the elevator doors opened, the sound of chaos hit them like a wave. Reporters were shouting questions at officers. Shoppers were crying or filming with their phones. Flashing lights from police cruisers painted the atrium in bursts of red and blue. Ryan and Trent stepped out, dripping from the sprinkler runoff, looking like they'd climbed out of a storm. For everyone else, the story was over. For them, it was just reaching its most dangerous stage. A uniformed officer ran up, shouting, "Command wants you in the lobby. Director Lowell's being transported." Trent nodded, waving him off. "Keep him secure and separated from media." She turned to Ryan, her voice low. "You saw the purge warning. Someone's trying to erase everything. If they succeed, everything you exposed vanishes with it." Ryan pulled the soaked flash drive from his pocket. "Not everything." Trent blinked. "You backed it up?" He gave a single nod. "I never rely on one plan." As they walked across the atrium floor, people stepped aside, whispering. The janitor everyone had ignored was now the man whose face was plastered across every screen. Ryan barely noticed. His mind was running calculations, purge timeframes, server redundancies, off-site nodes. He'd worked on crisis logistics long enough to know that if a system initiated a remote data wipe, it wasn't confined to the building. It was mirrored across connected properties. Someone was protecting more than money. They reached the east exit where media lights flared like search beams. A reporter shouted, "Sir, are you the one who stopped the kidnapping? Are you former law enforcement?" Ryan didn't slow. "Just maintenance," he said quietly. The reporters surged closer. Trent blocked them, barking orders for space. Behind her, Ryan caught sight of Emma sitting on a bench beside a paramedic. She was wrapped in a dry blanket now, cheeks flushed from exhaustion but alive, safe. When she saw him, she jumped up and ran straight into his arms. "Daddy." He knelt, wrapping her tight, burying his face in her hair. "I've got you," he whispered. "It's over." But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. Somewhere in the system, someone still held the other end of this network. Trent approached, her expression softening at the sight before hardening again. "Ryan," she said quietly, "we need to move her out of here. If the purge came from outside, they know what data you copied. That makes both of you targets." He stood, still holding Emma's hand. "You think they'd come after a kid? They already did once." He nodded, scanning the area. A police cruiser waited near the barricade. "Take her to the precinct," he said to the nearest officer. "Keep her in protective custody until I get there." The officer hesitated. "Sir, with respect, who exactly are you?" Ryan's eyes hardened. "A man who knows how to keep his family alive. Now go." The officer obeyed without another word. As the cruiser pulled away, Ryan turned back to Trent. "How long before the purge completes?" 10 minutes, maybe less." He looked toward the digital billboard still flickering across the atrium. The feed was frozen on Lowell's confession, the last recorded triumph before everything started burning underneath. "Then we use those screens one last time." Trent frowned. "You mean go public again?" He was already walking toward the information desk, climbing onto the raised platform. "If they're trying to erase this, we give them something they can't delete." He connected his tablet to the public broadcast system, overriding the standard loop. The static cleared, and suddenly his voice echoed across the entire mall, spilling out of every speaker. "Earlier today, this place became a battlefield," he began, tone calm but edged with command. "You saw kidnapping, corruption, and exposure, But what you didn't see was the machine behind it, the people pulling strings from offices far beyond these walls. They're erasing the evidence right now. But not all of it. A copy exists. And if anything happens to me or to Sergeant Trent, that copy will surface everywhere. He turned toward the nearest camera, meeting it with a steady stare. You wanted the truth. Now you're part of protecting it. Record this feed, share it, and make sure they can't bury it again. In seconds, phones went up all over the atrium. Hundreds of screens blinked as people recorded the broadcast. Reporters turned their cameras back toward him. He didn't care about fame or credit. He just needed insurance. Trent stepped up beside him, her voice carrying over the mic. This is Sergeant Mallory Trent, head of Westbrook Security. I authorize this message. What you've seen today wasn't just a failure of procedure. It was a reminder of what happens when authority forgets accountability. That ends now. The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was raw, emotional, carried by relief and defiance. Ryan killed the mic, handing her the tablet. Now they can't silence us. She glanced at the crowd, then back at him. You realize you just turned them all into a whistleblower network? He almost smiled. That's the point. Her radio crackled. Command to Trent, urgent. Federal investigators en route. They're taking jurisdiction. Trent looked at him. Looks like you're about to have bigger company. Ryan exhaled slowly. Let them come. But the moment of calm shattered with a sharp explosion outside. The glass doors of the east entrance trembled under the shockwave. People screamed. Officers rushed to form barriers as a plume of smoke rose from the parking lot. Trent grabbed her radio. All units. Possible secondary device, eastern perimeter. Ryan's heart clenched. Emma! They sprinted toward the exit, pushing through panicked crowds. Outside, the air was thick with dust and sirens. The cruiser that had taken Emma was gone, but a burning car lay overturned 30 yards away. For a terrifying instant, Ryan's body locked up. Then he saw her, Emma, safe, standing beside another officer who was pulling her away from the wreckage. He ran to her, dropping to his knees and pulling her into his arms again. The officer stammered. Car next to us blew up. Must have been a timed charge. We think it was meant as a distraction. Ryan looked over the smoke. Not a distraction. A message. Trent came up beside him, coughing. From who? He didn't answer right away. His gaze had shifted back toward the mall, where the digital screens now glitched again, lines of code replacing the broadcast message. Someone was already trying to overwrite what he'd said. Ryan's jaw tightened. They want this buried, but they just made their biggest mistake yet. Trent's eyes narrowed. And what's that? He turned toward her, expression cold and certain. They reminded me what I'm still capable of. He stood, lifting Emma into his arms as sirens wailed in the distance. Subscribe if you believe heroes aren't the ones in command. They're the ones who refuse to back down when the system turns against them. Smoke curled through the night air as the last echo of the explosion faded. Police cordons sealed off the parking lot while medics moved among the crowd. Emma clung to Ryan's neck, trembling but unharmed. Her heartbeat pressed against his chest, quick and fragile, grounding him in the middle of chaos. He kissed her forehead and whispered, "You're safe now, I promise." Trent joined them, her uniform streaked with soot. Bomb squads sweeping the perimeter. Whoever did this planned it fast, too fast. Ryan set Emma gently into the back of an ambulance. That's because they were already here. Trent frowned. Inside the mall? He nodded, eyes scanning the flashing reflections in the glass doors. They were watching us the whole time. waiting for Lowell to fall so they could bury the rest. Trent crossed her arms, trying to sound firm though her voice trembled. "We've got federal agents en route. They'll secure what's left of the data." Ryan looked at her, calm but certain. "No, they'll secure what's left of the narrative, and then they'll erase the parts that point, higher up." She stared at him, the realization dawning. "You think the feds are part of it?" "I don't think," he said quietly. "I've seen this before." He turned toward the mall again. The giant screen still glitched, code spilling across them like digital blood. Whatever network was attacking hadn't stopped. It was spreading. "Trent, I need every generator line cut to the control hub. If we starve their connection, they can't override the public feeds. That'll knock out power to the whole complex." "Exactly. Blackout forces them to play in my arena, dark and quiet." She hesitated only a second before relaying the order over her radio. "All power to central grid. Shut it down." The hum of electricity dimmed as lights across the mall flickered, then went black. Only the emergency strobes remained, flashing red every few seconds like a slow heartbeat. The crowd fell silent, the chaos folding into unease. For the first time that day, the building felt alive, breathing with tension. Ryan adjusted the strap of his tool belt. "Keep Emma safe. I'll finish what they started." Trent grabbed his arm. "Ryan, you've done enough. Let the agencies handle this." He met her eyes, voice steady but firm. "You saw what happened when I let them handle it. My daughter was kidnapped, your department was infiltrated, and the truth was nearly buried under protocol. I won't let that happen again." Trent's grip loosened. "You're walking into the dark without backup." He gave her a faint, weary smile. "That's where I've always worked best." He slipped away before she could argue, vanishing back into the mall's shadowed interior. The emergency lights cast long, pulsing reflections across the polished floors. Every echo of his boots bounced off marble and glass. It reminded him of the combat zones he once moved through, silent before the storm, full of ghosts waiting for mistakes. He reached the central corridor leading to the control hub. The doors were still ajar from before, but something had changed. The smell of smoke had deepened. He stepped through carefully, scanning corners. A low hum pulsed through the walls again, faint but rhythmic, like a server struggling to stay alive. The console that once displayed Lowell's confession now streamed fresh code. The purge hadn't stopped. It had evolved. Whoever was behind it had taken direct control. Ryan approached slowly, every sense alert. "You're persistent," he muttered under his breath. A distorted voice emanated from the console speakers, the same one from the radio earlier. "You should have taken my offer, Mr. Calder. You could have walked away a hero. Now you'll die forgotten." Ryan's hands hovered above the keys. "You've already lost," he said. "Everyone's seen your network. Your fingerprints are all over it." The voice laughed softly. "Fingerprints can be erased, but you, your daughter, you're a liability that can be removed." Ryan's pulse didn't rise. He typed a single command into the console, rerouting the signal to his tablet. Then, "Come remove me yourself." The static crackled once more, then fell silent. He knew what that meant. They were on site. Whoever they weren't hiding behind firewalls anymore. The sound of footsteps confirmed it, multiple sets, closing in from both ends of the corridor. Ryan ducked behind the central column, unslinging the metal wrench from his belt. The men emerging from the dark weren't cops or agents. They were private contractors, dressed in tactical gray, moving with formation precision. Their weapons gleamed under the emergency strobes. "Hold position," one of them ordered. "Targets inside." Ryan watched them fan out, 2 taking the right flank, 1 moving left. He waited until the first man passed his hiding spot, then moved silently behind him. The takedown was quick. Wrench strike to the shoulder joint, arm twist, silence. Ryan caught the man before he hit the floor. The others reacted instantly. Contact. Bullets ripped through the glass partitions. Ryan rolled behind a pillar, shards raining down. He spotted the reflective glow of a maintenance pipe above the corridor, still pressurized. Perfect. He pulled his multi-tool, loosened the valve, and ducked away. A burst of steam exploded into the hallway, blinding the contractors in a thick, hissing fog. Ryan moved through it like he'd done 100 times before. Invisible, efficient. He disarmed one, slammed another into the wall, used their own momentum against them. The last man lunged, knife flashing. Ryan sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, and drove the wrench into his ribs. The man crumpled. Silence returned. Only the hiss of the ruptured pipe remained. Ryan stepped over the bodies, breathing steady, eyes cold. "You brought soldiers to a janitor fight," he muttered. He turned back to the console. The purge process still flickered at 98%. Almost done. He slammed his tablet into the data port, overriding it with a local command. The screen froze, then blinked to black. Lines of text reappeared. His code, not theirs. Backup initiated. Local control restored. A faint light returned to the mall's main screens, his broadcast feed replaying on a loop. Lowell's confession, Keller's arrest, and the footage of corruption filled every display again. The truth was back in the open. Over his radio, Trent's voice crackled through. "Ryan, power's stabilizing. What did you do?" He allowed himself a small breath. "Just cleaned up their mess." "You're insane," she said, but there was pride in her tone. "The whole country's watching again. You just made this story untouchable." He looked up toward the atrium ceiling, where rain from the broken skylight was beginning to fall. "Good," he said softly. "Let them see everything." As the downpour began to wash through the ruined mall, Ryan stood amid the smoke and flickering screens, the sound of rain merging with sirens outside. Public exposure had been achieved. Poetic justice was complete. For the first time since the nightmare began, he allowed himself to smile, just a little. "You can scrub systems," he whispered, "but you can't delete the truth." Rain poured through the shattered skylight, falling in cold sheets across the atrium. The crowd had been evacuated. The sirens had faded to a distant hum, and only the hollow echo of dripping water filled the space. Ryan stood beneath the flickering lights, soaked and still, staring up at the monitors replaying the evidence. It was over, or so the world would think. But deep down, he knew that truth was only ever half the battle. Exposure didn't guarantee justice. It only forced the powerful to shift tactics. He glanced at the lifeless forms of the mercenaries he'd left in the corridor. Their uniforms were unmarked, their weapons without serials. Whoever hired them hadn't left a signature. That meant one thing. The network extended beyond Lowell's corporate reach. These weren't random enforcers. They were professionals trained to disappear. Over his radio, Trent's voice broke through the static. "Ryan, are you still in the main concourse?" He pressed the receiver. "Still here. Everything's stabilized. The public feed's back on loop. But I doubt that's the end." There was a pause. Then, softer, "I know. The agents just arrived. They're already trying to pull jurisdiction. You should see the way they look at me, like I'm the problem now." "They can't control the narrative anymore," Ryan said. "The footage is mirrored across every local news channel. Let them try to bury it." "Still," Trent replied. "They want you for questioning. Officially, you interfered with an ongoing operation." Ryan almost smiled. "Interfered?" "I saved it." He turned toward the West Hall as two figures approached through the haze. Federal agents, black suits gleaming under the red emergency lights. One of them, a tall man with silver hair and unreadable eyes, raised a hand in greeting. "Mr. Calder," he called, voice carrying easily through the cavernous space. "Impressive work. You've made quite the broadcast." Ryan didn't move. "You're late." The man stopped a few feet away. "We prefer to let chaos settle before stepping in. I'm Special Agent Dunn. This is Agent Porter." Porter, a younger woman with sharp features, studied him carefully. "Your actions tonight may have saved lives, but they also compromised an investigation. You released classified surveillance to the public." Ryan's gaze stayed steady. "That surveillance was evidence of a crime. You had months to act on it and didn't. I didn't compromise your investigation. You compromised justice." Dunn's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You have military training, correct? Tactical background, that explains the efficiency." Ryan said nothing. Dunn continued, tone casual. "Tell me something, Mr. Calder. Why did a former SWAT instructor take a maintenance job at a shopping mall? Seems like a waste of talent." Ryan's jaw flexed, but his tone remained calm. "Because I wanted my daughter to grow up somewhere quiet, somewhere safe." Porter folded her arms. "And how safe is she now? You've made enemies tonight, powerful ones." Ryan's patience frayed. "If you came here to threaten me, you're wasting time." Dunn stepped closer, voice lowering. "Not threaten, warn. You've exposed a network that doesn't vanish with one arrest. Lowell's been our cover target for months. He wasn't the head, just a gatekeeper. You kicked open the door we were quietly picking." Trent's voice cut in again through the radio. "Ryan, they're asking for custody of the evidence. Don't hand it over." He met Dunn's stare. "You'll have to go through the sergeant." The agent's smile faded. "You think she can stop us?" Ryan turned slightly, rainwater dripping from his jacket. "I think she already has the crowd on her side, and now the world's watching every move you make. That's the beauty of exposure. You can't hide behind secrecy once people start asking questions." Dunn's calm cracked just enough to show irritation. "Careful, Calder. Heroes have a short shelf life in systems like this." Ryan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Then I'll keep cleaning until they run out of mess." Porter's radio crackled suddenly. She turned away to listen. "Sir, we've got an update. Headquarters says the purge protocol has spread. It's hitting other databases now, law enforcement servers, financial archives, even federal contracts." Dunn's expression changed instantly, his mask of control slipping. "That's not possible. It was localized." Ryan shook his head. "No, it was connected through Lowell's system. The same network that fed money through the mall is eating your own files now. Looks like the cleaner became the contagion." The agents exchanged a panicked look before Dunn snapped, "We need full digital containment now." As they hurried toward their vehicles, Trent appeared from the side corridor, soaked and exhausted. "What did you say to them?" "Nothing they didn't already know," Ryan replied. "They just didn't realize how fast rot spreads once it's exposed to air." She exhaled shakily, half laughing. "You realize you just triggered a government-wide panic." "Good," he said. "Panic gets attention." They walked toward the atrium's main doors. Rainwater pooled under their boots, reflecting the screen still looping his broadcast. "You should get Emma home," Trent said quietly. "You've done more than enough." He stopped, glancing back at the shattered skylight. When I joined SWAT, I thought protecting meant control. Tonight reminded me it means presence, being there when nobody else shows up. Trent smiled faintly. "You're not going to disappear after this, are you?" He looked at her. "No. They'll try to find me anyway. Might as well choose the ground I stand on." Outside, paramedics were loading the injured into ambulances. The media's lights flickered against the falling rain. Ryan spotted Emma sitting under an awning, wrapped in a new blanket. She waved when she saw him, her smile small but pure. He walked to her, kneeling beside the bench. "You okay, kiddo?" She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did you fix it?" He hesitated, then smiled softly. "For now." Her tiny hand reached for his, and he held it tightly. Behind them, Trent spoke quietly into her radio, her tone commanding again. The voice of a leader who had rediscovered her purpose. Ryan stood, lifting Emma into his arms. The flash drive in his pocket felt heavier than steel. It wasn't just evidence anymore. It was leverage, protection, and a reminder that the truth only mattered if you kept it alive. As they walked toward the edge of the parking lot, headlights flashed from the incoming convoy of black SUVs. Trent moved to block their path, her hand on her sidearm. Ryan didn't look back. "If they want to rewrite history," he said softly, "they'll have to start with mine." Lightning flared over the mall, the rain intensifying again, and through it all, the looped footage kept playing. Lowell's face frozen mid-confession, every lie preserved for the world to see. The janitor they ignored had become the firewall they couldn't breach. Floodlights cut through the rain as the black SUVs rolled closer, engines idling in tight formation. The air carried that particular silence that comes before escalation. A silence Ryan had learned to recognize in war zones and back alleys alike. He shifted Emma on his shoulder, keeping her face turned away from the lights. Beside him, Trent squared her stance, one hand raised toward the convoy. The first SUV stopped. A man in a dark coat stepped out, umbrella glinting under the downpour. His stride was unhurried, his confidence almost theatrical. "Sergeant Trent," he called, voice polished, practiced. "Special Director Hale, Federal Oversight Division." He turned his gaze to Ryan. "And the man of the hour. Mr. Calder, your reputation precedes you." Ryan didn't respond. He kept his grip firm on Emma's small hand. Hale's tone dripped with cordial poison, the kind that always came before a cleanup, not a commendation. Trent's jaw tightened. "Director Hale, the situation's contained. The perpetrators are in custody. We'll deliver the evidence through proper channels." Hale smiled. "Oh, I'm sure you will. That's exactly why we're here, to make sure it reaches the right channels." Ryan caught the shift in his eyes, the subtle flicker toward the pocket, where the flash drive rested. "You mean the kind that disappear after review?" he said flatly. Hale chuckled softly. "You've done impressive work tonight. But let's be honest, you've embarrassed a great many people. There are consequences for that." Trent stepped forward, rain streaking down her face. "Are you threatening him?" "Threats are unnecessary," Hale said, his tone almost gentle. "Mr. Calder knows how institutions work. You were part of one once, weren't you? You understand the value of discretion." Ryan shifted Emma to his other arm. "I understand the value of accountability, and I'm not handing this over." The director's expression barely changed. "That flash drive contains classified material obtained without clearance. You're in possession of stolen federal property." Ryan gave a low laugh. "Funny. That's what every guilty system says when someone exposes it." Hale's men stepped out of the SUVs, 6 in total, dressed not like agents but like private operatives, clean suits hiding tactical posture. Their formation was disciplined, triangular, flanking without drawing weapons. This wasn't an arrest. It was intimidation with paperwork waiting behind it. Trent moved subtly closer to Ryan. "You're not taking him," she said. "He's under protective jurisdiction pending investigation." Hale sighed, shaking his head as though pitying them both. "Sergeant Trent, your department no longer exists as of 1 hour ago. Federal consolidation order. Every operation here now falls under my division." Ryan's eyes met hers. "They're cutting you out." Trent's voice shook but didn't break. "You don't have the authority to erase witnesses." "Oh, I do," Hale replied calmly. "Because this entire narrative, from the kidnapping to the arrest, was built on compromised security infrastructure. I can claim operational breach, nullify your footage, and seal the file indefinitely. You'll be reassigned. He'll be detained for questioning. The girl will go into protective hold." That last phrase froze Ryan in place. He'd faced armed men, explosives, and bureaucrats, but the thought of strangers taking Emma lit something primal behind his eyes. He spoke softly, dangerously. "Say that again." Hale smirked. "You heard me." Ryan stepped forward, slow, deliberate, his soaked uniform clinging to him like armor. "You touch my daughter, and you'll find out what real containment feels like." The men surrounding Hale shifted slightly. Hands went to concealed holsters. The storm intensified. Trent raised both palms, voice sharp. "Everyone stand down!" Her command cut through the noise. Even Hale hesitated. Rain hissed against asphalt, thunder rumbling in the distance. Ryan's voice dropped to a calm whisper. "Director, you think you control the story, but you don't. It's already out there. People recorded everything. Every second of tonight is in 100 different feeds, mirrored across servers you'll never reach." Hale's confidence flickered. "You're bluffing." Ryan shook his head. "No, I built redundancy into the upload. Every local network connected to the mall carried the data. The moment you walked through those doors, it went live again." Trent's radio crackled. Dispatch confirming social media saturation. Hashtags spreading. Live reposts of the footage replaying on national outlets. The confession was everywhere. Hale looked past them toward the skyline, realization dawning. He'd lost control. The silence stretched. Finally, he straightened his tie and gestured to his men. "We'll be in touch." Ryan gave a slow nod. "I'll look forward to the paperwork." Hale's expression darkened, but he didn't reply. He turned, umbrella tilting slightly, and walked back to the SUV. The convoy retreated without a siren, the sound of tires hissing against wet pavement fading into the storm. Trent exhaled heavily, lowering her shoulders. "You realize you just forced a federal retreat." Ryan glanced down at Emma, who had fallen asleep against his shoulder, the exhaustion finally catching up. "No," he said softly. "I forced accountability." She stared at him, part awe, part disbelief. "You should have been running the department instead of fixing its lights." He smiled faintly. "Sometimes you see clearer from the ground." They walked back toward the atrium. Rain poured through the shattered glass, turning puddles into rivers that reflected the glowing screens above. The world had changed in a single night, and neither of them knew what would come next. Trent looked at him as they reached the doorway. "What will you do now?" He adjusted Emma in his arms. "Go home, feed her breakfast, try to remember what peace sounds like." "And after that?" Ryan stopped, glancing back at the mall one last time. "If they come again, I'll be ready. But for now..." He nodded toward the blinking lights and silent halls. This place is clean. Trent's radio buzzed faintly, reports streaming in, media coverage exploding, investigations reopening, public outrage building. The ripple effect was already spreading beyond their city. Ryan gave her a quiet nod of gratitude. "You did good, Sergeant." She returned it with a weary smile. "You too, maintenance man." As he walked away into the rain, the screens behind him continued looping his broadcast, the janitor's calm voice echoing across the drenched plaza. It no longer sounded like defiance. It sounded like history being written in real time, unstoppable, irreversible. And beneath that storm-soaked light, Ryan Calder, the man they ignored, the father they underestimated, finally walked his daughter home. Dawn crept over the skyline, soft and pale, washing the soaked streets in muted gold. The storm had passed, leaving puddles that reflected the broken glass and the blinking blue, lights of the last remaining police cars. Ryan walked along the sidewalk, carrying Emma in his arms. She slept deeply now, one arm curled around his neck, her small face pressed against his shoulder. The weight of her steadied him, reminded him why he'd done it all, why he'd refused to stand still when the world told him to wait for orders. The city was quiet. Reporters had finally dispersed. The mall behind him loomed like a monument, its facade cracked, its banners shredded, yet somehow dignified. In that silence, it didn't look like a crime scene. It looked like the truth finally unburied. Trent pulled up beside him in an unmarked car, window rolling down. She looked different now, less the rigid officer, more the person underneath. "The governor's office called," she said. "They're launching a full inquiry. Lowell's confession went national. Your footage can't be taken down, it's everywhere. Even the agencies that tried to silence it are investigating each other." Ryan gave a faint smile. Public exposure, poetic justice, it works every time. She returned the smile. "You've changed more in one night than I did in 20 years. He shrugged. "All I did was stop waiting for permission." Her gaze shifted to the sleeping child in his arms. "You did more than that. You gave people a reason to believe again, that someone ordinary could still do something extraordinary." For a moment, neither spoke. The rain had left a fresh smell in the air, and the wind carried the faint hum of distant traffic. Finally, Trent asked, "What will you do now?" Ryan glanced down at Emma. "Be her dad. That's the only title I ever wanted to keep." Trent nodded, emotion flickering behind her eyes. "You know they'll come after you. The people behind this, they don't lose quietly." He met her gaze, calm and unshaken. "Let them come. I'm not the one hiding anymore." She studied him for a moment longer, then held out her hand. "If you ever need backup," he shook it firmly, "I'll call the only cop who didn't look away." Trent smiled, started the car, and drove off. Ryan watched until her taillights disappeared down the slick street. The morning sun broke through the clouds then, catching the puddles, turning shards of water into scattered mirrors. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was standing in the wreckage of something lost. He felt like he'd rebuilt something invisible but real, dignity. He reached their small apartment as the city stirred awake. Inside, everything was simple. Tools by the door, breakfast dishes left from the day before, drawings on the fridge of stick figures holding hands under blue crayon skies. He set Emma on the couch and covered her with a blanket. For a long time, he just watched her sleep. Every scar, every bruise from his past, physical and otherwise, seemed worth it for this moment. The news played softly from the TV. Reporter's voice narrated over footage of the mall. Sources confirmed that the mall incident, initially thought to be an isolated hostage situation, has exposed a nationwide embezzlement network involving multiple corporations and government contractors. Public response has surged online, demanding reform. Anonymous sources attribute the exposure to a former tactical officer turned maintenance worker, identity confirmed as Ryan Calder. He muted the sound before Emma could stir. Fame didn't interest him. He hadn't done this for recognition. He'd done it because silence, he'd learned, is the loudest form of surrender. He walked to the kitchen, made coffee, and looked out the window as the sunlight stretched across the city. Somewhere out there, men in suits were already rewriting statements, shifting blame, reorganizing chains of command. But for once, they were reacting to him, not the other way around. The janitor had turned the system's own arrogance against itself and won. The knock came mid-thought, soft, deliberate. Ryan opened the door to find a small envelope on the floor, unmarked. Inside was a single flash drive identical to the one in his pocket. Attached was a note written in neat, anonymous handwriting. "You exposed one branch. There are more. Keep cleaning." He stared at it for a long moment, then looked down at Emma, still sleeping peacefully. The decision came without hesitation. He tucked the new drive beside the old one, zipped his jacket, and poured the rest of his coffee into the sink. Whatever this was, he wasn't done. But this time, he wouldn't be alone. The people had seen what truth looked like, and once people see it, they start looking for more. As he stepped back into the doorway, morning traffic rolled by, blending into the steady rhythm of a city reborn. The mall's scandal would fade eventually, but the impact wouldn't. People would talk about the janitor who dismantled corruption with a mop, a wrench, and the courage to defy silence. He smiled faintly, locking the door behind him. Somewhere, another story was waiting to be cleaned. Before leaving, he turned off the TV, where one final replay showed him carrying his daughter through the rain, his voice echoing across the airwaves. "You can scrub systems, but you can't delete the truth." He looked at the screen one last time, then whispered to himself, "Let's see what mess they leave next." By the time the sun rose fully, Ryan Calder had disappeared into the crowd again. Another quiet worker, unseen, unremarkable, and absolutely unstoppable. Now ask me the next story title you'd like to see. Subscribe and don't miss our next story. Trust me, you'll feel it. And tell me in the comments, what injustice should we tackle next?